Did you ever imagine getting on a bus towed by a truck? It sounds like a crazy experiment, but for decades, these hybrids roamed the roads, mixing the best and the worst of heavy and passenger transport. They were the so-called truck buses, machines as strange as they were ingenious, promising to revolutionize collective travel. But something went wrong. Today, we will discover why these forgotten giants disappeared and what secrets the rarest buses in history hid. The birth of trailer buses. In the mid-20th century, the world was experiencing a fever for reinventing public transportation. Cities were growing, private cars were beginning to fill the streets, and governments needed to move more people without spending fortunes. In this context, an idea emerged that was as peculiar as it was fascinating. The trailer bus, a kind of hybrid between truck and bus that seemed to promise a revolution in urban mobility. A trailer bus, as the name suggests, was a vehicle divided into two parts, a tractor or motorized head, very similar to a truck, and a specially designed trailer for transporting passengers. There were two main variants. On one hand, full trailer buses, which were simple motorless wagons pulled by another vehicle. On the other, semi-trailer buses, where the front cabin did the pulling while the trailer housed the passengers. It was this second version that truly captured the attention of engineers and governments, as it seemed the ideal solution to mass transportation problems. The concept was born in Amsterdam in 1924, when Dutch engineers were looking for a way to create longer buses that wouldn't get stuck crossing the city's arched bridges. Only 3 units were built, and although the idea was ingenious, the result was disappointing. The components wore out quickly, the ride was uncomfortable, and the coupling system between the cabin and trailer was unreliable. 3 years later, in 1927, the Dutch abandoned the experiment and replaced the trailers with traditional rigid chassis. However, the concept did not die there. In 1939, Australia revived the idea driven by the shortage of buses during World War II. The United Kingdom, focused on the war effort, had stopped exporting its famous double-decker buses, and Australians needed a quick replacement. Thus, more than 120 locally manufactured trailer buses were born. Although they looked rough, they served their purpose, moving crowds when the country needed it most. The last of them rolled on the roads until 1984, becoming one of the longest-lasting examples of this technology. A global experiment. After the war, the Netherlands tried again. In 1945, they acquired 250 Crossley tractors from the United Kingdom and combined them with trailers produced by the local company DAF. Their goal was not to innovate, but to rebuild a devastated transportation system. Those trailer buses operated for a decade and were retired in the 1950s when the country managed to restore its conventional fleet. In Czechoslovakia, during the 1960s, similar tests were conducted. Some cities adopted them with good results, especially Bratislava, where a small fleet of trailer buses operated successfully for 17 years. Even in Cuba, much later, a local version of this idea emerged. The famous camels, or Cuban camels, so named for their double-humped shape. These massive vehicles, assembled from trucks and adapted trailers, were essential for transporting thousands of people during economic crises. Although they are fading away today, they still symbolize Caribbean ingenuity. South Africa also embraced the idea, although with scant historical documentation. It is known that their trailer buses ran until the mid-1980s, and there are photographs proving their use in various cities. Something similar happened in the United States, Ukraine, Japan, Switzerland, Namibia, and India, where local variants appeared including double-deckers. Each country had its version, but the fate was the same: a temporary solution to the lack of conventional buses. Why they seemed like a great idea. On paper, trailer buses were a dream of economic engineering. They cost much less than designing a bus from scratch, as they could utilize the same chassis and engines as existing trucks. This industrial flexibility was very appealing. Factories could alternate between building cargo or passenger vehicles without significantly modifying their production lines. Moreover, their transport capacity was impressive. They could move more passengers or more weight in a single trip, reducing operational costs and the number of drivers needed to cover a route. In times of war or post-war, when steel, fuel, and vehicles were scarce, this efficiency was pure gold. From the government's perspective, they represented a cheap, temporary solution. They required neither major state investments nor a complete redesign of the transport system. It was enough to adapt what already existed. In a phrase, one could say they were the perfect solution to a problem that would soon cease to exist, the problems that condemned them. However, reality dismantled the dream. The trailer buses, though ingenious, were plagued with technical and safety issues. Their high center of gravity made them unstable on curves, and the rigid truck chassis caused excessive vibrations, turning every trip into a constant jolt. The suspension system, designed for cargo rather than passengers, failed to provide the minimum comfort expected in public transport. Additionally, the gap between the cabin and the trailer caused a noticeable delay in maneuvers and braking. When the driver turned or braked, the trailer took fractions of a second to react, increasing the risk of accidents. There was also the fear that the trailer might detach in transit, a highly unlikely but troubling possibility for the public. In cities with narrow streets or heavy traffic, maneuvering one of these giants was a nightmare. Many minor accidents occurred while trying to navigate tight corners or brake on steep slopes. To top it off, operating them required 2 people, the tractor driver and a ticket collector in the trailer. This doubled labor costs, making prolonged use unfeasible. In practice, what was designed to save money ended up being more expensive and more complicated to maintain. The arrival of the articulated bus. The final blow came with the technological evolution of the 50s and 60s when articulated buses appeared. These new vehicles retained the concept of a body divided into 2 sections, but with a controlled articulation in the center and a single engine. They were more maneuverable, safer, and required only 1 driver. Articulated buses offered greater passenger capacity without sacrificing comfort or stability. The articulation, instead of being a simple hitch point, was designed to rotate smoothly and controlled, eliminating the risk of separation. One might say that the articulated bus was to the trailer bus what the twin engine was to the trijet: more efficient, simpler, and safer. Over time, cities worldwide replaced their trailer buses with these new articulated models. And thus, the original idea was relegated to the archives of transportation history. Why a truck could never be a bus? Nowadays, the idea of converting a modern truck into a bus sounds absurd. Current trucks are designed for endurance, torque, and heavy loads, not human comfort. Their suspensions are stiff. Their weight distribution is meant for stability under tons of cargo, and their cabins prioritize power over comfort. Modern buses, on the other hand, are developed with the opposite logic: smoothness, accessibility, and balance. Every detail, from low floors to shock absorbers, is aimed at offering a comfortable and safe experience. Today, the same chassis that moves tons of cement is unsuitable for transporting people without causing backaches. Over time, the line between truck and bus has become clearer. Each has evolved for its own purpose. The former, a symbol of industrial strength; the latter, an emblem of human transportation, public perception, and cultural footprint. From the beginning, people viewed trailer buses with suspicion. They were noisy, uncomfortable, and felt more like a truck with makeshift seats than a modern means of transport. In many countries, they were considered a second-rate option intended for those with no other choice. However, in regions like Cuba or Africa, these vehicles became symbols of ingenuity and survival. They represented the ability of a people to adapt and move forward, even when resources were scarce. Many veteran drivers and mechanics still remember them fondly as relics of a time when creativity was valued more than comfort. The echo of a lost era. Trailer buses were witnesses to a time when necessity drove innovation. In tough times, they offered a temporary solution, a way to keep cities moving without relying on large budgets or new factories. Today, they are a rarity, a footnote in the history of transport, but also proof that human creativity always finds a way, even on borrowed wheels. If you were surprised by the story of these trailer buses that once defied transportation logic, give it a like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to keep exploring the most curious machines that rolled on our roads. See you in the next journey where history and steel come back to life on wheels.